They torched his Marine dress blues, the uniform that embodied his sacrifice, his comrades, and his service. Margaret Hensley, the iron-fisted HOA president, thought she could brush it off as neighborhood standards trampling on a Marine's honor without facing any consequences. But she didn't anticipate the firestorm that would erupt. Marines, veterans, and an entire nation rallied behind Daniel Carter, transforming his injustice into a movement. Just wait until you hear how the corpse ensured she faced the consequences for every last ember of that uniform. Thomas Carter had lived his life by a code: respect, honor, duty. As a retired Marine, he carried those principles long after his active service ended. But today, standing on the porch of his suburban home, he was overwhelmed by a fury he hadn't felt since combat, raw and unrelenting. It all began with a letter. Thomas's son, Lieutenant Daniel Carter, had recently returned from years of service, and to honor him, Thomas displayed Daniel's Marine dress blues in a polished glass case on their porch next to a fluttering American flag. It wasn't just decoration. It was a tribute to Daniel's sacrifices. However, not everyone appreciated it. The Homeowners Association, HOA, a clique of petty tyrants ruling the neighborhood with an iron grip, sent a violation notice signed by Margaret Hensley, declaring the uniform and flag an eyesore that clashed with the community's aesthetic. Thomas read it once, twice, then tossed it in the trash, incredulous. An eyesore? Margaret had always been a nuisance, handing out fines for trivialities like mailbox colors or towing cars over minor parking infractions. Now she was targeting the Marine Corps. 2 days later, a second notice arrived, threatening fines if the display wasn't removed. Thomas smirked bitterly. They could fine him all they wanted, but he wasn't budging. Then came the fire. The stench of burning fabric jolted Thomas awake, thick and choking. He stumbled to the door and froze. The glass case lay shattered, its jagged edges glinting under the streetlights. Daniel's dress blues were crumpled on the lawn, consumed by flames, the flag trampled in the dirt. For a moment, Thomas couldn't move. Then rage took over. He grabbed a hose and doused the fire, but it was too late. The uniform was ash. His hands trembled as he reviewed the security footage. There they were, Margaret Hensley and her lackey, Richard Voss, striding onto his porch in the dead of night, tearing the uniform from its case, dragging it to the lawn, and striking the match. They didn't even bother to hide their faces. Thomas's jaw clenched. They hadn't just burned cloth. They'd spat on his son's service and on every Marine who'd ever fought. This wasn't over. When Daniel stepped out of his car that morning, he sensed something was off. The air reeked of charred fabric. His father stood on the porch, rigid with anger, but it was the pile of ashes that stopped Daniel cold. His dress blues lay in ruins. He approached slowly, boots crunching over the blackened remains. Gold buttons melted, the Marine emblems scorched beyond recognition. That uniform had been more than fabric. It embodied the pride of his promotion, the weight of fallen brothers' funerals, and the joy of homecomings. Now it was gone. "This isn't just fabric," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "It's everything I fought for." Thomas gripped his shoulder in silence. They both understood. Then another letter arrived, fining them for the waste left by the burned uniform. Pinned in Margaret's smoke tone, Daniel crumpled it in his fist, his pain sharpening into resolve. This wouldn't stand. Chode spread like wildfire. Local veterans, Vietnam and Gulf War vets who understood the uniform's weight, showed up first, grim-faced and furious. Then the security footage hit the internet. The video of Margaret and Richard torching the uniform went viral, and the backlash was instant. You don't mess with the Marines. This was an insult to every uniform. The HOA had just signed its death warrant. Emails and calls flooded the HOA. Threats of lawsuits piled up. News crews swarmed. Margaret became the most despised figure in the county. Active duty Marines joined in. Daniel's old unit reached out, followed by Marines nationwide. posting photos of their dress blues with captions like "Burn one, thousands more rise." A viral image showed a Marine at attention, uniform pristine, with a caption read, "Burn this too." One evening, Daniel received a call from a gruff voice. "Daniel, Lieutenant Carter?" "Colonel James Malone, USMC retired. I saw the video. This is unacceptable. The court has your back, son. Tell us what you need." Daniel exhaled, hope flickering. This wasn't just his fight anymore. At dawn, engines rumbled down the street, jeeps, trucks, motorcycles. Marines stepped out, some in crisp dress blues, others in combat fatigues, veterans in old uniforms or leather jackets. They formed a silent wall along the curb, no signs, no shouts, just presence. The media swarmed, headlines blaring. Marines defend their own, and HOA under siege. Social media erupted, donations poured in, and military groups condemned the HOA. Even Congress weighed in, calling it a disgrace. Inside her office, Margaret fumed. "This is harassment," she snapped, hurling her tablet. "They're making me the villain." Richard shifted nervously. "Maybe we should." "No," she barked. "This is our neighborhood." She demanded a restraining order, oblivious to the optics of sicking cops on Marines on live TV. Her lawyer blanched but complied. She had just made her fatal mistake. The Marine network buzzed, veterans groups, charities, and even retired generals rallied. A 4-star posted online. The HOA picked the wrong fight. #Justice for Daniel trended globally, and petitions to oust Margaret hit 500,000 signatures. Lawsuits followed, destruction of property, emotional distress, violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The State Attorney General launched an investigation into the HOA's corruption, extortionate fines, discriminatory enforcement, property scams. The FBI and HUD took notice. Margaret's empire crumbled. Board members resigned, distancing themselves from her. Legal fees bankrupted the HOA. At an emergency meeting, her own board ousted her. Cameras rolled as she signed her resignation, then fooled past a silent line of Marines in dress blues, her final humiliation. The HOA dissolved soon after, ruined by lawsuits and public scorn. Margaret vanished, a pariah drowning in debt. On a quiet Sunday, Daniel stood at attention as Colonel Malone presented him with new dress blues, embroidered with the names of fallen comrades. "The corpse takes care of its own," Malone said as Daniel donned the uniform. Pride swelled within him. Honor was restored. Margaret's fall sparked a movement. The Carter Act was passed, banning HOAs from restricting military displays across the nation. Porches showcased dress blues as a defiant tribute. At a veterans rally, Daniel spoke. "This wasn't just about a uniform, it was about honor sacrifice. Every service member knows their service matters. We understand, and we always fight for it." The crowd roared in approval. Simply put, the Marines had won. You don't mess with them.